Hi, and welcome back to the Working Class History podcast. As you may know, we don't get any sort of funding from any wealthy benefactors, corporations, governments, or political parties. Our work is funded by you, our listeners and readers, on Patreon. In return, our supporters on Patreon get access to exclusive content and benefits, like ad-free episodes, bonus podcast episodes, and a couple of exclusive discussion podcast series, fireside chats, and radical reads. So here is a little preview of our latest episode for our patrons. You can join us, help support our work, and listen to the whole thing today at patreon.com/workingclasshistory. Link in the show notes. During the main episodes, Dave also mentioned another mass protest which grassroots activists wanted to hold in October 1990. But Militant, the other major Trotskyist group in the UK at that time, which dominated the National Federation, known as the Fed, disagreed with this strategy.
So there was, lobbying of the All Britain Federation. In the end, the All Britain Federation said, we'll organise a people's march against the poll tax, but only 75 people will be allowed to go on it, from Manchester to London. And they were all handpicked. And basically, they were all members of Militant. And we said, this is ridiculous. It's like a stunt, but it's not. What we need is something en masse that would defend the right to protest, as well as to show the movement is strong and the movement is not for turning. So what happened in the end, there was an uneasy compromise in which the All Britain Federation said, well, if you in London want to organise a London demonstration, we won't oppose it. I mean, it was hard work working with organisations that are controlled by one political party. So we in London, there was a lot of debate in the London Federation, and it was agreed that we would have a massive rally and gig in Brockwell Park in South London, in Brixton. And Trafalgar Square Defendants Campaign said, well, that's not enough. We need a protest outside the courts and outside Brixton Prison. So we decided to organise feeder events, which to support the rally, but organise our own feeder events. So 20,000 people turned up to the rally, which is a pretty good turnout for just a London demonstration. And we had about 1,500 turned up to the protest outside one of the key courts that were processing non-payers. And also after the rally, about 3,500 people marched to Brixton Prison, where there were Trafalgar Square prisoners and non-payers being held in prison. So they were quite substantial. We knew that the police, this potentially was quite challenging to the police. And we had a meeting, I think I attended a meeting with the Chief of Police, London's Commissioner of Police or whoever. We said, look, we want it all to go off without incident. Can you guarantee from your side? And he was saying he'd heard rumblings within the police that they wanted a rematch after Trafalgar Square. And he was going to stamp that out. Yes, that's what he said personally. We got it in writing to the Trafalgar Square Defendants Campaign. On the day, once the rally was coming to an end and we were about to march to Brixton Prison, 3,500 people, we had this very extensive monitoring system. Everyone had bust cards on what to do if arrested. We had videos, we had observers coordinated. We had a really sophisticated, this was the first real kind, anything had happened like that in this country, where we had planned for what would happen if the police attacked the demonstration. And we were able to monitor police radios and police conversations on the ground and the events. Basically, I was one of the heads. We didn't really have a head steward, but I was one of the coordinators. And when we got to Brixton Prison, I think I was the coordinator who was near the front of the march. And the agreement was that we were going to gather outside Brixton Prison for an hour and then disperse. And without going into detail, a lot of strange things began to happen. Police suddenly got withdrawn. Other police units seemed to be arriving in side streets with, with heavier armour. And it seemed obvious that they were gearing up to attack the demonstration. which is what happened. I can't remember how many people arrested, 120 or something. The police immediately had a press conference and were able to tell the whole world straight away that it was all caused by the demonstrators. And we, within 24 hours, we had a complete alternative proof that this would have been a premeditated police attack on an agreed demonstration. So the aftermath was they wanted to use the situation to say, look, this whole movement, the anti-poll tax movement, is kind of full of radicals. They're not interested in really the poll tax. They're just using it to attack the police and the establishment. And we were able to paint a different story. The anti-poll tax movement was united. We were determined to defeat the poll tax, but also to defend our right to demonstrate. And actually, we were able to prove that the police had fabricated their version of events.
That brings us to the end of this episode preview. Hope you enjoyed it. To listen to the full thing and help support our work researching and promoting people's history, join us today on Patreon at patreon.com/workingclasshistory. That's patreon.com/workingclasshistory. Link in the show notes. Catch you next time.